Welcome back to Continental Club, the show where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Slightly different episode this week. There's just two of us, and Henry and Doogie are both away. So it's myself and Patrick Van Strassen. Thanks for joining me.
How you doing? Great to be here. It's good to be here with the real football heads.
Yes,
is that what they're called?
Well, yeah. Hopefully, yeah. We are the real football heads. That's what everyone knows us at home. But yeah, good to have you on board, Pat. You were an OG Continental Club member, so nice to have you back. Today,
and we're talking about breakout wonder kids as well. As the father of one of Europe's greatest breakout wonder kids, this is kind of my specialist subject.
Yeah, fair. Are you talking about Zach Jalab there, or your daughter?
A bit of both.
Yeah,
but I would say Zach's actually, coming into his peak years now.
He is.
As in, he needs to start putting up numbers, or we will bin him.
Yeah.
Whereas my daughter, I'd say, is still firmly on
still a lot of potential.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Zach very much realising his at the moment. Like you say, there's no real wonder kids left in the FD team, which is a bit mad. Zach was 19 when I started, now 25. A bit ridiculous, to be honest. But yes, as Pat so eloquently introduced, today we're talking about the wonder kids of the season in Europe. We asked you guys at home for your suggestions on Twitter, and you were great, actually. You gave me too much to work with. So we picked out a kind of selection of the best kind of breakout wonder kids. We were quite strict with it. They had to be 20 or under, and also on consideration, the players had to be enjoying their breakout year this year. It can't be players who've enjoyed great seasons in the past. So Gavi, Pedri, Camavinga, Bellingham, Malo Gusto even didn't make the cut as a result. We're going slightly more obscure in that sense, but also some familiar names. Players you'll be familiar with already, given how good they've been this season. None other than Rasmus Hojlund at the suggestion of @Forza Napoli 50. Might be harbouring some hopes of him coming in as an Osimhen replacement maybe in the future. But Pat, what have you made of Hojlund this term? I know you labelled him a little version of Erling Haaland on Sunday Vibes. I'm sure that was, slightly for comic effect. But But what have you made of him? I mean, he has obviously had some comparisons with Haaland. What have you made of him in the Serie A this season?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's partially the name, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that he's Scandinavian and massive. Yeah. But I mean, he is much more, which is weird to say about a player being compared to a Man City guy. He's a bit more involved in play.
Yeah.
We know about the Atalanta attack now over the years that Gasperini tends to build a system that really revolves a lot, and so you do get a lot of goal production out of the wide guys. So the chief kind of threat this season has been Ademola Lookman, but right behind him is Hojlund. And given that he joined in the summer for admittedly pretty big money, 17 million euros from Sturm Graz, he is having a pretty amazing first year in a hard league, in a team which is not their best, and actually in a division which is very competitive now. So I think he's on 9 goals and assists in the league. Well, when you've turned 20 halfway through the season, that's pretty impressive stuff. He slowed down a little bit recently, but on the other hand, form at international level, still extremely hot. Got a hat-trick. Was that against Finland?
Yeah, against Finland, yeah.
And also scored against Kazakhstan as well. What's really exciting about Hojlund, I mean, obviously there's the pace, the size, the goal-scoring instinct, but what's really exciting is he's having this breakout season in a year where we're expecting the striker market is going to be extremely competitive.
Yep.
There are so many teams looking forwards this summer. Chelsea are looking for a striker. United are looking for a striker. Real Madrid might be looking for the guy after Benzema. Bayern are looking for a striker. Pretty much all the teams in the Premier League are always looking for a striker. Even Arsenal reportedly are considering it, and they've got 3.
Yeah.
So if you have a great season in a top league at 20 years old this season, you might actually get a chance to go to a really big club that you would not get otherwise. And what's really good about Hojlund is there isn't really a red flag in these numbers. We've talked before about guys like Jonathan David or Lois Openda, and you look at them and you can certainly see the talent. But part of David's appeal is that he's reasonably flexible, compare around the front line. Openda, you'd say one of the red flags is that he doesn't necessarily have the size to play back to goal for a team that just needs a goal scorer. Well, Hojlund doesn't have one of those weaknesses. And sometimes I think particularly in the kind of English football ecosystem, it is tempting to overrate guys just because they're tall. But
Sure.
Hojlund isn't just tall. He's not like Sorloth or something. He actually can hold the ball up. He can stand up to big defenders, and he can beat them for pace as well. So he, to me, is a really exciting prospect. I don't know what the best home for him is. Do you have a feeling on this? I mean, it could just be United.
I'm not sure. I mean, there's something really exciting about him, at least as a United fan. Kind of feel like he would be that kind of like slight unknown pick, not an established name, that could be the right, I don't know, could be the more exciting pick than even someone like Osimhen, who would have a lot of pressure to deliver given how much he would cost or whatever. You know, the likelihood of Osimhen actually leaving Napoli this summer, pretty slim, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know, that there's something about him whereby yeah, he's had a great kind of 12 months, and yeah, he could just kind of keep on going. But I mean, yeah, like you say, his goal and assist output not crazy, but 0.6 xG and assists per 90 is pretty amazing for someone who's 20 years old. And the fact that, like you say, he's very involved in play. He's kind of, you know, been able to facilitate kind of Ademola Lookman in that front two.
Yeah.
So clearly quite an intelligent forward as well. So yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think any club that is looking, I think, to spend less than 60 million on a striker this summer, I feel like Hojlund's pretty much top of the list in that sense, in terms of, you know, potential, in terms of, you know, how young he is, how much upside there is to him, and how, yeah, I mean, I can't see Atalanta, don't know, I guess he's on probably a fairly sizable contract, and Atalanta did pay 17 mil for him, so they could drive a hard bargain, but at the same time, they're not a club that necessarily price players out of the market. So if he really wants to leave, and a big club comes in for him and offers a decent price, then I could see it happening. Let's move on to our next suggestion now from @AOKunsi. Sorry if I butchered your name there, but a great suggestion. Gift Orban, seemingly come out of nowhere this year, signed for Ghent in January from Norwegian outfit Stabæk. Again, sorry if I butchered the name. But yeah, I mean, he was picked up. I was looking into him before. He was actually picked up last year or was spotted at an amateur tournament in Nigeria by the sporting director of Stabæk, Torgeir Bjarman, who actually discovered John Obi Mikel and Odion Ighalo and brought them to Norway when he was sporting director at Lyn in the 2000s. So he's got a pretty good track record of spotting talent. But he actually joined the club after they were relegated to the Norwegian second tier last year. And so scored 16 goals in the Norwegian second tier, was the top scorer in the division. But when Ghent came in for him, I think it was seen as a bit of a risk, because you know, this is a guy who hadn't played in the top five, not in the top flight league in Europe before, relatively untested, had been picked up from an amateur tournament, but he's just absolutely hit the ground running in the Pro League. 14 goals and 2 assists in 14 Pro League and Europa Conference League starts. I think if you are familiar with him already, you will be, because he scored the fastest hat-trick in UEFA competition history in March in that 4-1 win over Istanbul Başakşehir. A great hat-trick as well, a real variety of goals. He's averaging 3.8 shots per 90 in the league. That's the third highest average in Belgium. So I mean, yeah, he just hasn't stopped since he's arrived in Europe last year. So hugely exciting talent, and apparently holds dreams of playing in the Premier League or the Bundesliga. Milan apparently are looking at him. Napoli are apparently looking at him as a replacement for Osimhen in the future. So again, probably not going to command as high a fee as Hojlund, considering that he didn't cost Ghent anywhere near that much. But like you were saying, Pat, another striker who, yeah, in this quite congested market in terms of buyers, could come to the fore this summer. And yeah, maybe as a backup option for someone like Hojlund. A different kind of striker, not as physical, not as tall, but still incredibly clinical, incredibly fast, really good at playing off the back line. So yeah, keep an eye out for Gift Orban this summer in the transfer market. Where do you want to go next, Pat? Is there anyone who's tickled your fancy out of the other options we've got here?
Well, Gift Orban is kind of an under the radar one, in a way. I mean, like, the Belgian league is obviously now at this point a division you have to look at, especially for striking prospects.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned them before, David and Openda obviously came out of there. Osimhen came out of there. But I think we can go for a slightly bigger name next. So I want to look at Xavi Simons. This comes from Jos Peters 93. So, I mean, he's one of those guys who has a pedigree as long as your arm. You know, like the academies he's come through. Went through La Masia, went to PSG. When he was 16, was given, I think, €1 million a year. That was
that was the rumoured
the clay.
Yeah.
When PSG were obviously trying to make a splash, which is, frankly, their academy should be the best in the world because they're the only big team in Paris. But he was going to be kind of the poster boy for the new PSG as it's worked out. He's actually the poster boy for the new PSV, taking over the reins kind of from Cody Hakpo, because him leaving in the middle of the season could have been fatal for their campaign. But Simons has been so good that he's been able to kind of drag them along by himself. I mean, I'm not saying it's just him, but he is undeniably the standout player. Sure. He's got 15 goals in the Eredivisie, which is joint top scorer in the division. And he's also got 8 assists. And he is a young man who's really taking on that level of responsibility for the first time. He's an interesting guy because when he was first coming through, people were like, he can play as an attacking midfielder. He can play on the wing. Maybe he'll play in central midfield. Like, who knows? Is he going to be a 10? And he is really, I guess, more of a winger than anything else, I suppose. And those players always make me a little bit nervous because those kind of in-between players, you never know whether they're going to be able to find a home when they step up to a bigger side, in the way that Ademola Lookman, for example, went around a bunch of different quite smart teams before finding a Lookman-shaped hole. Someone like Kai Havertz, for example, I think really suits one league but doesn't necessarily suit another. So it'll be interesting to see what Simons has ended up being, but he could be player of the season in the Eredivisie this year. Van Nistelrooy is extremely reliant on him, obviously has great faith in him. Do you want to talk a little bit about his numbers? And I know it's not just him, that there are other people who deserve to be highlighted in that PSV squad.
Yeah, of course. But I think Simons really does stand out. I mean, Johan Bakayoko, another 20-year-old Belgian winger who has 5 goals and 5 assists. He's been playing mainly off the right. He also got a shout out. I can't remember who suggested him on Twitter actually, but he's also been fantastic in terms of young players in the Eredivisie. But yeah, I mean, like you say, Pat, I think he has come into his own in that, I think most of his output has come when he's played through the centre, but he's been able to deputise, or he's been able to replace Gakpo so effectively when playing on the left wing. His output hasn't really dropped too much when he's been out there. And I just think when you're such an all-round technical player, when you're a really good dribbler, he's taking nearly 3 shots a game. Often, that cutting in from the left wing is the best position for you at that age, isn't it? But I know where you're coming from. It will be interesting to see where he goes next. It kind of feels like at this point in his career, he's still only 20 years old. It's mad because we've been hearing about him for the last 4 or 5 years. But this is the only season in which he's got any meaningful minutes in a top division. I kind of feel, he's obviously back at home in the Netherlands as well. I kind of feel like another year or even another 2 years at PSV is the best shout for him, because I think he's been so unsettled throughout his career. I say his career, he's still so young, but he's been so unsettled the last few years. And so there's been so much chat about him. I think that, that reported wage that he got at PSG must have put so much more pressure on him at a club where, rarely are minutes afforded to academy products. But yeah, I feel like staying at PSV would be great for him, and at a PSV which are, kind of in a slight transition under Van Nistelrooy as well. Let's move on to another player now who, like Simons, been chatted about for years. This comes from @Matchday Reviews. Finally got his big break this season. Has had a difficult couple of years in some respects. Not really given a chance under Peter Bosz at Lyon, but under Laurent Blanc, Rayan Cherki finally seems to be producing the goods, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this guy since he was 16.
Yeah. I still remember him. Was it against Man City or was it? Who was it? Or was it against Bayern? I think in the Champions League semi-final during COVID, and he came on for the last few minutes and just absolutely bossed them. I mean, Lyon, I think were out of the tie at that point, but I just remember thinking this guy's just going to go straight into the first team, but it's taken nearly 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some injuries in there as well.
True.
Plus, I think sometimes against like a team like Bayern in the Champions League, sometimes they just cannot handle someone who's not really scared of them. Like, I know this is a long time ago now, but I even remember
that was a great one too.
Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, like just running at Bayern. That was in the year they won the treble. And they were kind of like, how dare someone do this to us? But Cherki does have that quality about him, that fearlessness, which I think is really exciting. And I mean, a product of the Lyon Academy, which at this stage is just a relentless kind of churn of quality. You know, Malo Gusto is obviously going to Chelsea in the summer. That'll be really exciting to see. But Cherki is one of the guys who they've always held up as, this guy will be a superstar. Him and Kakare, I suppose.
Yeah.
Now one
of the few they haven't let go at this point as well. You know, all their time.
But you kind of think maybe if he'd been fitter, it might have happened. But 16 starts this year, so that's almost double the starts he'd made in previous seasons. 3 goals and 5 assists. But what's interesting about him is that he's not just about end product. I mean, 3.3 chances created per 90 is obscene. Like, it's ridiculous. 2.6 shots for a guy who's not a striker or a kind of elite wide forward is also a lot. But he stitches play together to nearly 4 dribbles a game, and that's something we've seen from him his entire career. He's always been a great progressive passer, always been a great progressive runner, and I think we're getting more appreciative of that sort of role. You know, you look at Jack Grealish doing something like that for Man City, where people were disappointed he didn't have huge goal and assist output. Now people are understanding that guys who knit your team together are just as important. There's going to be a bit of a tussle over Cherki at international level before we even get to clubs going for him, because he's eligible for France, eligible for Algeria, eligible for Italy. Supposedly Mancini's making overtures to try and get him to commit to the Azzurri. He's played for France's under-21s. I imagine that is what he'll go for.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
It kind of feels like that's what tends to happen in these situations. But he is a really interesting player. I just think because it's so early in his career, we will get another couple of seasons of him, and Lyon don't sell easily. But to go back to what you were saying about the Eredivisie before, in the past, if you were looking for, say, a young attacker and you went to Liga and they were overpriced, you would go somewhere like the Eredivisie and say, oh, okay, well, we'll get somebody more cheaply here. But now we've seen Hakpo go for big money. We've seen Anthony go for colossal money. Players come out of the Portuguese league for a lot of money. And so now maybe a league like the French league will get the advantage back again, because if the prices are roughly the same, then you'd say, well, why would we not get somebody from a team that regularly play European football, that play in a top 5 league? Why would we go to the Eredivisie, which is extremely disparate in terms of quality? So you might well see that some teams start doing their shopping in the lesser of the big 5 leagues again. I think Cherki's a really interesting guy. I think he and Kakare look like they could play at almost any level, same as Malo Gusto. So I wouldn't be surprised if at least 2 or all 3 of those turn out to be stars.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point you make there as well, and especially in this Lyon team, which, you know, again, set to not qualify for Champions League football once again. They do need money. I know that they're under new ownership now, but you know, that losing out on Champions League money year after year is, you know, does hurt these clubs, especially in Liga, where, you know, money has been an issue over the last couple of years. And it's interesting, you know, like a club like Ajax, which has been able to rely on Champions League money, which has, you know, always been run pretty efficiently, has been able to afford to really rack up the prices on players. But yeah, and once again, like for a player like this to be shining in a side which hasn't been at its best for a while now, is slowly making improvements on Laurent Blanc. But yeah, Cherki is a huge talent. And yeah, I feel like we have one more season of regular football and we could see him kind of really explode in terms of his output. Let's move on to at Sean15 Mackenzie's suggestion. One of 2 suggestions actually from Sean15 Mackenzie was an absolute fire this week. A man who Real Madrid are looking at, 20-year-old Celta Vigo midfielder Gabri Veiga. This is a guy who I feel like people have wanted to talk about for all year. We haven't really got round to it, but his output in La Liga this term is just frightening. 9 goals and 4 assists. Only Iago Aspas has more goal involvements than him in the Celta squad. that's never going to change really, as Aspas is just always their talisman. But he is just so exciting. He was only playing for the club's B team for 4 this year. He didn't even sign his first professional contract or first team contract until January. And he's, popped up at important times as well. He scored 3 times across 2 victories over Real Betis, who are, not to be sniffed at this season. Got 2 goals and an assist in their in their 3-0 win over Valladolid in February. Ranked 7th in the league for goals and assists per 90. He's taking nearly 3 shots a game. Also averaging over 3 tackles and interceptions. Just seems like a really good all-round midfielder. According to The Athletic, he's likely to leave this summer for 40 million euros. Although that's a bit up in the air, because apparently his sister is taking over. Is kind of in charge of his affairs at the moment. So essentially acting as his agent. But he left the agency he was a part of, I think, earlier in the season, and basically all the top agents in Europe are after him. I think Pini Zahavi is after him. I think George Mendes tried to get him but failed. Pierre Guardiola, of course, Pep Guardiola's brother, also interested in picking him up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, 40 million euro release clause. He's been linked with Real Madrid, Man City, Man United. Real Madrid's top target this summer, as is Man City's, Jude Bellingham. So those two looking to go to war over him, although Dortmund is still holding out hope that Bellingham might even stay for an extra year, especially if they win the Bundesliga. So yeah, Gabri Veiga at 40 million could be a pretty good backup option to him in terms of his all-round game, in terms of his output in a very average team. This is pretty amazing to see, and especially compared to other kind of Spanish midfielders, of this generation or previous generations, who tend to be far more kind of known for being technicians and whatnot. Gabri Veiga seems to be a player who really takes the game by the scruff of the neck, a bit more of a box-to-box player. Really, really exciting talent. Do you have any thoughts on him, where he could go this summer?
Well, it's one of those things where I think quite often goal-scoring midfielders, people say everybody needs a goal-scoring midfielder, but actually a lot of teams don't. They're happy to let their forwards do the goal-scoring. When you have a midfielder who really wants to get into the box, that can destabilise your side unless it's built for them to do that. Now, I think there are quite a few managers around who do like that, so I do think that, what we see Gundogan do for Manchester City, he's meant to pop up in the box. He's meant to be an extra body there. Something that Ten Hag has done throughout his career. He did it with Van de Beek at Ajax. He's now doing it kind of with Eriksen and with Sabitzer as well. He wants them to get shots. He wants them to be able to drop out wide like he's done with Eriksen. So having a midfield type who is better at getting shots, better at creating chances, and better at really, I suppose, beating a man or playing like a winger than the average central midfielder is quite a good fit for that sort of team. Similarly, Arsenal, he's been linked with Arsenal too. Arsenal will probably look for a Xhaka replacement, and you can imagine Veiga playing in that advanced position on the edge of the box. That would really suit him. But it's a difficult role. It's not something that he can just go to any club and do. So I think he's got to be really careful. Real Madrid, to me, they've got Valverde, they want Bellingham. I guess I don't quite see it, but if you're getting Bellingham as that guy, which he's kind of evolved more into, right, like a final third player, and the price is just too high, then I don't think Veiga would be a bad substitute at all. And these goal numbers at his age, that's such a huge indicator of quality that I'd be tempted to get him and say, we will work out something to do with this guy, rather than worrying too much about how exactly does he fit into our system in the long term.
Yeah, fair enough. And especially with Real Madrid, Camavinga's been playing at left back a lot of this second half of the season. There is still space in that midfield. Valverde's obviously been playing a lot on the right as well. So yeah, could be a good option for Real Madrid if they miss out on Jude Bellingham. 0.4 XG and assists per 90 this season as well, which is pretty great. So it's not, it's no fluke that he's got the kind of goal output that he does. I think he's still overperforming, but that's still pretty impressive for a kind of maybe central midfielder at that age. We've got a few left here. Let's just run through them very quickly. Zeno Debast from @Ben Mattinson, not a player I was aware of really at all before this season, but has really stepped up for Anderlecht this term. 19 years old, centre-back. Not surprisingly, he's been labelled the next company because he's an Anderlecht boy. Already, made appearances for Belgium as well. But Anderlecht's most used player this season. Pretty amazing. He's also ranked in the top 10% of centre-backs for progressive passes, top 5% for take-ons. And when you watch him play, he does... I feel like that's a part of his game that's already almost sorted. Like his playing out from the back, his ability to beat a man or to play through a press already looks really good, which is really, really promising. I think the kind of physical part of his game probably still needs some work. I think like throwing him into a Premier League club, for example, or throwing him even maybe into a Bundesliga back line might be too big an ask at this moment in time, but he does seem like a really exciting prospect for the future. He's also played alongside Jan Vertonghen for this whole season, and I think they seem to get on really well as well. They kind of do interviews together and whatnot, so it seems like Vertonghen's kind of taken under his wing in some ways. So yeah, great player to learn off, such experience alongside him there. Also went to the World Cup, although didn't get onto the pitch in Qatar. They probably could have done with him, to be honest. Fabio Miretti from Sean 15 Mackenzie as well. Kind of one of the bright sparks of this Juventus season under Max Allegri. I don't know what you've made of him, Pat, but 19 years old to be breaking into that Juve midfield. He's played in a ton of positions, even played second striker to Vlahovic. He seems really exciting as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of player that Juventus need as they approach who knows how large a rebuild. There are rumours that a bunch of their good players could leave. We obviously don't know what the scale of the sanctions against them will be because the points returning after that deduction, that doesn't mean that they've been cleared. It's all still very much up in the air.
Really?
So I think that with Miretti again, I just feel like we need longer to know what he is. Like he's played more as a kind of, passing central midfielder in the past for Italy's youth sides. He's also been an attacking midfielder, played off Vlahovic. Like, what is he? What's clear is that he's talented. What's clear is that he's somebody who Allegri trusts to play multiple tactical roles. No one's going to go and take him off Juventus. I'm intrigued to see what he is next season. But then again, I'm intrigued to see what Juventus are next season because it feels like they might turn into... I don't remember what the name was for Juventus on Pro Evo Soccer.
I got Piedmont or something.
Yeah, it was. So, but it feels like that's what Juventus might actually be next season.
Yeah,
Miretti's a great person to have in the squad in that situation.
They've got kind of tons of quite a few youngsters have actually kind of got minutes actually. So I guess kind of out of necessity in some ways. This Juve's transfer policy, we've talked a lot about it a lot on this channel, has really caught up with them in the last couple of years. But I guess this is the silver lining, is that we're actually getting to see some actual homegrown Juve youngsters break into the team. But yeah, I'm with you, Pat. We're not quite sure yet, and in that midfield where Rabiot has had an amazing season, Locatelli's still kind of number one in terms of that or kind of defensive role. It'll be interesting to see kind of where Miretti ends up in that side. And finally, from at EFL Heritage, Nico Williams. Probably should have spoken about him earlier, suppose. He's just been an absolute sensation for Athletic Club, hasn't he? 6 goals and 4 assists. I think actually, doesn't tell the whole story. He's really been everything that's been good about Bilbao this season. 2.5 dribbles, 2.2 shots per 90, creating nearly 2 chances as well. And he's doing such a big amount of ball carrying for that side as well. Top 5% of wingers for progressive carries. He's also receiving tons of progressive passes. I think only his brother Iñaki Williams has outscored him in the side. And I think you have to give him credit as well, because coming into a team where your older brother is, a kind of a modern what's the word?
Legend.
Modern legend, that's it.
Yeah.
Escaped me there. I think there's a lot of pressure on you to perform, and I think he's, clearly got actually a higher ceiling than him in terms of his, just in terms of his raw ability on the wing. Iñaki Williams, I think, hasn't necessarily improved that much since his early days, where it feels like Nico Williams could improve massively over the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. Again, probably going to be fairly impossible to get him out of the club. Athletic do not let their wonder kids go easily. I feel like they'll want at least another year or two out of him. So that's the selection we've got from you guys at home. Also at Monster Master suggested Alejandro Balde. We've spoken about him a lot on this channel over the course of the year. But yeah, amazing year at Barcelona for the young left back. If you were to rank them, the top 3 out of the players we've spoken about today,
Ooh. what
would you go for?
I would probably go. It depends whether I want to go like talent or value or something like that. But I'm going to put Hojlund top.
Okay.
I just think out-and-out striker prospects are pretty rare right now. And then I will say Cherki.
Okay.
And Simons.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know. Nico Williams should probably be in there. Maybe Nico Williams second, and then Cherki.
Okay. Nice.
I just think that they've played in better leagues, and I can more easily see a place for them in top sides. I think some of the others, they just worry me. You see them excel in a very particular system, and then they're going to go to a big club, and a big club's going to say, "You are a right winger." Now, that always makes me a little bit worried for young players.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll go probably something similar. I think Xavi Simons, just in terms of his output this season, has just been ridiculous.
Sure.
I think I've got to go with him for number 1. And then, it's tough. I think I'll then go Rasmus Hojlund, and then I think I'll go for Gift Orban, actually. I know he's not playing in the top league, but I think his output over the last year has been ridiculous. And just, the fact that he hasn't really stopped is really, really impressive. Especially, kind of going to 2 new countries, just hitting the ground running. Really, really impressed by Gift Orban. So those were our rankings of the top Wonder Kids having breakout seasons, or we've had breakout seasons this year. I'm sure we missed a ton of names out, so let us know in the comments below. Get debating. And let's move on to our big match predictions. So big match predictions this week. We're not going to go through the results from last week because Henry and Dukes are not here, but I do believe they wrote off Dortmund's title chances, and they are now back top of the league. So there you go. But let's kick off with Roma versus Milan on Saturday, because this is a huge race in the top 4 in Serie A, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Serie A is extremely tight at the top right now, and these sides are neck and neck. They're on level pegging points-wise. I think they're both on 56.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Same goal difference as well. I think it's just Milan who are ahead on goals scored. So,
oh my God. And of course, there is the possibility Juve drop out. We don't really know. So there's still plenty to play for. The only thing is both these sides will probably be looking ahead to European fixtures. Obviously, Roma through to the last stages of the Europa League and have a tough fixture coming up against Leverkusen, and then Milan facing rivals Inter in the Champions League. So there's a limit to how hard you want to go in these kind of matches. I don't know. I don't expect this to be much of a barn burner. I think Milan have been quite a negative team this season, and Roma have the best defence in the division. To me, I think this might be a little bit of a stale one. You even look at like Milan's success against Napoli in the Champions League, and on another night they could easily have lost. But really, it was by playing defensive counter-attack football. And there's nothing wrong with that when your skills suit it. When you've got Rafael, they definitely do. But I don't know. I don't see Mourinho being caught out by that too easily. So on the other hand, I don't see Roma hitting deep and countering on Milan particularly effectively either. So this to me has low scoring draw.
Yeah.
Maybe not written all over it, but written to the side of it.
Okay.
On a label. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree actually, Pat. It doesn't feel like a classic, does it? Although at the same time there is a lot riding on it. That's the thing.
Sure.
So I feel like it could be quite dull for the first 60 minutes, and then maybe game plans might go out the window slightly, and teams both sides will just go for it. But then at the same time, a draw probably suits both of them as well in some ways. I don't know though. I think they both. Well, I think Roma have Inter at home just before their semi-final against Leverkusen in a couple of weeks. So yeah, it's a tough one. I think. What you go? Did you go for 1-1?
I think I'll take 1-1 because also it looks like Giroud is going to be out.
Yeah.
And I think when you're playing a team sitting deep, Giroud is the guy you want in your squad. If they have to start Rebic up front, I don't really see it.
Yeah, no. I mean, equally for Roma, Dybala's not playing. Smalling's also out injured. Wijnaldum out too. So, yeah, without some pretty big players in this game, Leao is in amazing form, scored 2 great goals against Lecce on the weekend, one of which was very reminiscent of his assist for Giroud, just kind of ran completely, just ran the length of the pitch pretty much in the build-up. I think home advantage might tell in this game. Roma aren't as in good form. They lost 3-1 to Atalanta on Monday night, but I just feel like they might do something in this match. I feel like Milan, that semi-final against Inter is going to be playing on their mind already, isn't it? I'm going to go 2-1 Roma. Let's move on to the Bundesliga. Union Berlin against Bayer Leverkusen. Big game this in terms of the top 4 race in the Bulli. Union all but out of the title race now, 5 points behind Dortmund with 5 games to go. I mean, if Bayern keep on dropping points, who knows, maybe second place is within their reach. But they were also beaten by Frankfurt in the DFB Pokal quarter-final, so we were always expecting them to drop off at some point in the season, and kind of, late March, early April proved to be that time, didn't it? Especially after losing to Bayern in the league. But it's still been a massively impressive season. I mean, they could not have expected to be 5 points off top with 5 games to go at the start of the campaign. Best defence in the league still. 4 points clear of 5th place Leipzig, who obviously lost to Leverkusen on the weekend. And they've recovered from their recent poor form. They beat Mönchengladbach 1-0. But they still need to avoid defeat here, I think, to be confident of securing that Champions League spot. They've got not the toughest games coming up, but they've still got Freiburg to play, Augsburg, Hoffenheim, who have been in much better form, have kind of steered clear of relegation, haven't they? And they're also without Yannick Harbour, who's been one of their key players this year, or at least he's a doubt for this game. So hopefully he'll be able to make it back in time. But Pat, I mean, Leverkusen, arguably the form team in Germany right now.
Sure.
This is a really tough opponent for Union Berlin, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that Alonso will kind of want to keep that momentum going. He'll play as strong a team as he can, even though they do have that Europa League fixture coming up. As you say, I think since the World Cup, only Dortmund have taken more points than Leverkusen. In fact, if the Bundesliga season had started on the day that Alonso was appointed as Leverkusen manager, then Dortmund would be top on 45 points, then Bayern on 44, and then Leverkusen just 2 behind on 42. Which is crazy, really, when you think of, the financial and squad advantages that those teams have. And the defence has been strong. I mean, insofar as any Bundesliga defence is strong, their defence has been fairly strong.
Given that it has been woefully bad, at points in the last 2 years, it's pretty impressive from it.
Yeah, and they've got good talent there. Yeah. But it's nice that we're seeing, particularly Diaby and Frimpong really impressing, but also Klosek is now firmly ensconced in that centre-forward slot. I kind of think that luck has caught up with Union. I'm not saying it's just luck, but they've overperformed their numbers constantly the entire time by a lot. And I think now Leverkusen are comfortably better than them. And I think that if Leverkusen score, more importantly, I don't think Union can score their way out of trouble. Yeah. So their aim here is try and keep a clean sheet. And I think that is just really difficult against this incarnation of Leverkusen. So I think this is an away victory.
Okay.
I'm going to say it's 2-0.
2-0, fair enough. I think logic would have that, wouldn't it? Wirtz is apparently a doubt with illness, but otherwise all their key players are fit. So they go into this with a pretty clean slate. And like you say, I know Wirtz has been a really big plus for them in the second half of the season. But, with Klosek scoring now, with Diaby and Frimpong in such good form, Adli has really stepped up in the second half of this season. Yeah. The problem is with Union, like you say, they do, especially at home, they do just tend to get unlikely results.
Yeah, I know.
And I kind of feel like logically, like Leverkusen will dominate this game and they will probably deserve to win it. However, I just feel like Union Berlin might get an equaliser in the last 10 minutes. I'm going to go for 1-1 in this game. And finally, Barcelona-Betis, we don't need to talk about this too much, partly because there are games going on this week which haven't happened yet. We're filming this quite early in the week due to resource issues. Midweek games in La Liga, including Betis against Sociedad, which is a real 6-pointer for the top 4. Barcelona, though, if they have beaten Rayo Vallecano this week, we're not sure, They only need to beat Betis and then Osasuna to seal their La Liga title. Obviously came back from some pretty horrendous form in the last month to beat Atletico Madrid on the weekend. Pedri's back in the side, so that's a big plus for Barca, but they may be without Christensen and Dembele for this game still. What do you see happening in this game, Pat?
I don't think Barca are as good as they look.
No.
They conceded 9 goals. I mean, from 24 XG against.
Yes, I mean that's pretty ridiculous in itself, isn't it?
It is absolutely insane. I mean, but they probably will win this game. Pedri being back is just such a huge factor. Betis are pretty good, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the game, in this Sociedad game, which I think will almost be more decisive
for sure
for their Champions League hopes. They're 6 points behind Sociedad, who are in 4th. So obviously, if they win that, they're right back in the hunt. If they lose it, they're basically out. I just think this is probably annoyingly a Barcelona victory. Sadly, they'll probably do it. And having not won the league last season, when they were probably actually better than Real Madrid, they're going to win the league this season when I think they're comfortably worse than Real Madrid. So you can't complain too much.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, to be fair to them, I think their XG against is still the best in the league.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think
it's the best by 1 or 2.
Yeah,
not the best by like 20 goals.
It is mad. I mean, they're comfortably going to smash that. I mean, I'm trying to think whether any team in the top 5 leagues has conceded as few as 9 in a season. Obviously, still many games to go, but
it's like a Primera Liga thing to happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, you had like, what was it, 15 that Chelsea conceded under Mourinho back in the day, which is staggering. I think Arsenal once conceded maybe 17.
17, wasn't it, 19?
And this is they're probably going to batter that.
Yeah,
it's just it's unthinkable, really. And for years it'll be one of those things where we're like, they actually weren't that good. You know what? They actually got handily dumped out of the Europa League, and everyone will say, but they won the Spanish league with like 10 goals conceded. I don't know. It's obscene.
It's mad,
really.
and it's pretty, and especially given how leaky that defence has been in seasons past.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a lot, but I think their defensive recruitment was good in the summer. But yeah, to stay good, a lot to thank for that. I'm going to go for. I think I might go for a draw, actually. No, you know what? I might go for a Betis win here. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I just think, at least if they do get a result, if they don't lose to Sociedad midweek, I think they're going to be really up for this. They have been, they have brought out some big results in big games over the last kind of 18 months. And Barcelona, their form at the Camp Nou has been patchy at best recently. I feel like foot off the gas a little bit. They're definitely going to win the league, I think. I feel like they might get punished here. 2-1 to Betis. Maybe a little bit of a mad prediction there. But that's all we have time for on Continental Club for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments below if there are any other Wonder Kids you want us to speak about in the future. Pat, where should they go next?
Oh, obviously they should subscribe to the channel. Yep. You can also subscribe to FD if you're not subscribed there already, and check out Why You're Wrong, where we're taking a look at some of the biggest narratives going around football Twitter and trying to work out whether they're actually true or not. Spoiler alert, mostly not.
What are you talking about this week? Because I think this will be going out just after Why You're Wrong.
Well, actually, this week we've done a bit of a retrospective, because the whole idea of it is to say, look, we're not infallible. We're not pretending that we know everything. So I've taken a look back at some of the shows we've done previously on Why You're Wrong, to say, well, was I right to kind of call out that narrative, or how is sort of history looking at that already? Trying to get a sense of, my take on Graham Potter when he was still at Chelsea, looking at Vlahovic in a bit more detail, going back to Trent Alexander-Arnold and seeing how he's been such a big part of Liverpool rediscovering some form. So it's an opportunity for us to be a bit more accountable for our opinions. So if that sounds good to you, then check it out.
Nice, yeah, definitely go and check that out. Great series on FD. Thanks for watching. Like Pat said, subscribe to EFD if you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.